My name is Andrei Osachuk. I welcome you to another training on Adobe Launch. This is a fragment of the episode number 30 of Adobe Launch Implementation Mastery course you can enroll in following the link under this video. Enjoy! In this video, you will get to know how to implement GEO IP Lookup services with Adobe Launch to leverage visitors' location information in your implementation. This training consists of 4 parts. In the first part, I will show you one of the services for GEO IP Lookup. And in the next part, I will show you how to implement that service in Adobe Launch and how to set data elements with the information that was retrieved. Then, in the third part, we will continue with the previous training about cookie consent form. And the idea for this training is to show the cookie consent form only for visitors from certain countries. For example, if somebody comes from European Union, then the cookie consent form should be shown on the site. Otherwise, it shouldn't be shown. This is the logic for this training. And in the fourth part, I will show you how to improve page load performance. And we will be talking about when you want to load or not load this or that library. So basically, in the scope of this training, we don't want to load cookie consent form library if the visitor comes not from the European Union, because in this case, we may not need to show the cookie consent form for them. This is the plan for this training. Now let's get started. First, I'm going to show you one of the sites. This is MaxMind.com, and this service is not only about GEO IP Lookup, it provides some other capabilities, but today we'll be talking about only GEO IP Lookup functionality. So this service supports JavaScript client API method, which basically is a JavaScript library, and you can see what has to be added to the site to leverage this library. And then this library has a number of different methods that allow you to retrieve location information. So if we look at what information can be retrieved, so for example, here you can see that this is an object and it has a number of different sub-objects, so city, continent, country, location, etc. And today we are going to talk about one field that we will build our logic in Adobe Launch with. This is country ISO_code that returns the country code in the ISO format, which is 2-letter code. So DE stands for Germany, US stands for United States, GB stands for United Kingdom, etc. So now I'm going to show you a few things about how we are going to implement this in Adobe Launch. So first, we will need to add this JavaScript library, and you already know how to do that. And then we will need to work with that library. And I have prepared a template that I'm going to show you right now. This is how we will work with the library. Obviously, on the site you can find all the documentation about all the methods, all the parameters, etc. But now I'm going to just briefly explain you how that library works. Once the library is loaded, we will need to fire the function geoip2.country. This is the method. So there are other methods like, for example, city, and this can be chosen depending on what type of information you want to retrieve. So this is the method geoip.country, and then we have 2 parameters, onSuccess and onError. So these are the callback function names. So every time when the API will return the information about the location, the onSuccess function will be called. And if the API returns an error, then the onError function will be called. So obviously you can rename it the way you want, but just know that there are two parameters that you need to include in the method function. Then, in every function, there will be another parameter that will either return you the location information, if that was a successful call to API, and if there was error, then the error parameter will help you to understand what type of error happened. In most of the cases, despite what GeoIP lookup function or services you are using, I always recommend you to have a function for errors, because in this case you can capture this information in one of your analytics solutions, like Adobe Analytics, for example, and then it will help you to monitor how often the errors happen, and probably this will be a good flag for you to look deeper into some issues and probably make decisions based on how often the errors happen, because in different regions, based on from which regions the visitors come to your site, one or another service may work better or worse. This is why it's always a good practice to monitor what type of errors and how often happen. During this training, we will concentrate our efforts on the location information. This is why we will be primarily working with the onSuccess callback function, and we'll parse the location information returned by the API method. So this is the template, and hope now it's clear what we need to do. Let's repeat it again. So first we will implement this JavaScript library with Adobe Launch, and then we will add some JavaScript to parse the location information returned by the API. So let's continue and build the implementation in Adobe Launch. As usual, I'm going to create a new library. And let's build a rule. I want to load my library as soon as possible. This is why I will be using the event type library loaded, because the geo information is helpful for many different aspects. You may want to pass this information to pixels, conversion tracking codes, to analytics solutions, basically to tune your implementation based on which country, which city, which zip code the visitors are associated with. Okay, so this will be my first rule, and I also need to set up the order so that this rule will be fired the very first. In the previous training, we set up a rule with the cookie consent library, which was set to the order 10. This is why I will set it to 9 to make sure that this will be loaded the first. Now let's go to actions, and we will add the library. So I'm going to add custom code. This will be HTML code, and we'll need to copy the reference to that JavaScript library, and let's do this. So I'm copying this code, and I will need it to add here. I also will append the protocol HTTPS, and we'll save it. So let's call it just take the name from the page. We'll keep changes. So the next part is to add the JavaScript that I showed you before, and we also need to copy it. And this will be the second action. Also custom code. In this case, this will be JavaScript. I paste it here, and I will need to amend a little the code here. So now when we fire that API, I want to add some information to the browser console about what has been retrieved. So this is why I'm going to add here console log and location as the parameter. So all the location information I want to see in the console log. So this will help me to understand whether this is working properly or not. And by the way, just in case, I also will show the error information in the console log if the error happens. This is the very first step, just to make sure that the library is working properly. So get visitor location. Okay, let's keep changes and name the rule. The library is ready. I'm going to switch to the site and reload the page. As we see, our rule was successfully fired. It was fired the very first, and then we can see in the console log the information that was retrieved from the API. So we can see that there is information about country, so this is Germany, and all other stuff. So now, since now we see that everything is working as expected, I'm going to work on the JavaScript a bit more to save the country code into a cookie so that afterwards we can capture this information and use it in any tag we want. So let me switch to my editor. So here I will just add some logic. Basically, you always need to build some JavaScript when you work with such tasks. So first I will add a variable to store the information that I need. So this will be visitor country code, and the source for this variable will be the location variable. This is why I'm going to type in location, then country, and then ISO code. So you may wonder what this variable is. How did I know that I need to type in the variable with this syntax? So let me explain it to you. If we go back to the browser and we'll see what has been returned, we can see that the hierarchy is country, and in the country we see ISO code. And everything which is returned is basically the location variable. So location, then dot country, then dot ISO code. This is like a JavaScript object. This is why I use this syntax. So location is the object, then in that object we have country sub-object, and then sub-object or subvariable in the country object, which is ISO_code. So this should return me the DE value in my case, which stands for Germany. So what I'm going to do next, I want to make sure that the country code was retrieved, because sometimes the country .iso_code may return just an empty value. For some reason, the lookup may not work with 100% of IP addresses. This is why I want to add a check. So basically, if visitor country code exists, then I want to add the country code to the browser console. So it will be just a notification for me. Again, I'm just showing you a very simplistic way how you can manipulate with the data. In your case, you can always fire here one code or another, but I'm going to just train you on basics here. So this will be the notification that the visitor is from, and I will add the country code. And let's see what we will have. So I'm just going to copy this code to Adobe Launch to update the rule. Okay, let's reload the page and see. As you see now, we have successfully retrieved the country code, as we can see it in the console. Okay, so my next step would be to set a cookie with the country code, and to also set another cookie to make sure that the visitor is from European Union or outside of European Union. So all this information will help me on the further steps. So how to work with the cookies you already know. This is why I'm not going to explain it in much details. So first let's set a cookie with the country code. I will call it visitor country code. Then I also want to make sure that this visitor is from European Union, and this is why I'm going to set another cookie that will have a value true if the country is a part of the European Union, or value false if it's not the case. Obviously, you can find in the majority of such APIs a separate variable or flag that shows you that this visitor is from European Union. But sometimes you don't know whether there are accurate rules for European Union countries. At least I know that there is at least one country that is still in some cases maybe a part of the European Union. In other services it's not a part of the European Union. And since I'm going to show you a method that will be universal for your implementations, you may want to always control every set of countries, so you can basically build your own condition for which countries should be associated with European Union, etc. So I'm going to create an array. I already have it, and I'm going just to paste it into my code. So I just prepare the list of all countries that I would like to consider as the countries of European Union. So here I'm going to create a new variable which will be country codes European Union, and it will consist of an array of values. And then I will need to check whether the country the visitor is associated with is a part of this array. So in this case, I will need to use another if condition, and I need to check whether this array includes the country the visitor came from. This is why I'm doing this check. And if that is true, then I will need to, let me copy console log. So I will need to have another notification in the browser console that the visitor is from European Union. And I will also set another cookie that I can use going forward. So this will be visitor, let's call it from EU. This will be the name of the cookie, and I will set true value. And obviously, if the visitor is not from the European Union, I will also need to do something in this case, and I will add a notification. The visitor location is outside European Union. And also we'll need to set the cookie to another value, which will be false. You may wonder why add true and false in quotes. The thing is that when you work with the cookies, they cannot contain Boolean values. So you can always, you need to always work with string values. This is why I add quotes to make sure that everyone understands when reads my code what type of value is going to be set in these cookies. So let's review what we have in the code. If the visitor, when the visitor comes to the site, we will query the API. The API will return either the location information or the error. If basically, let me also add a notification in case of the error that I removed. So this will be just the error object that I want to see in the console. Okay, so then we need to check whether the country code was successfully retrieved, because sometimes it may be a blank value instead of the real value. This is why here we have a check on the value, and then we have some notifications to the browser console that the visitor is from a country, certain country, and we set this value to the cookie with the name visitor country code. And then we have another block. We want to check whether the visitor came from European Union. This is why we set up an array with all the values that we want to associate with European Union. We can fully control this set of values, and then we check if the visitor is from European Union. Then we set the cookie visitor from EU to true, otherwise to false. This is the logic. And now to make sure that our code works as accurate as possible, we also need to consider a case when the visitor country code doesn't exist. So what we want to do in this case, we want to remove the cookies that we set, because it may appear that, for example, today the visitor is in his, let's say, home location, but then another day probably he's traveling somewhere and for some reason his or her IP address wasn't successfully determined, or the API wasn't properly working. This is why we want to, let's say, reset the cookies, basically to delete the cookies. This is why I'm going to add another method here. So else means if the country code doesn't have any value, and we will just delete the cookies. So what I'm going to do is to delete both cookies. This is our JavaScript code. Hope everything is clear. And now let's copy this code to Adobe Launch and see how it works. I don't change anything else. So let's look again at how the rule works. So first we load the library, and then we start working with the object that was returned by the API. While the library is being built, I just want to give you some tips. If you have the situation that you can't use any third-party GEO IP lookup services, but you already have Adobe Target, you may want to leverage Adobe Target as a GEO lookup service. I'm not going to show you today how to do that. Just remember that there is such an option, and reach out to me should you have any questions. Alright, so let's check the site. I will reload the page. And what we can see, the visitor is from DE. However, the country codes EU isn't defined. I must make an error somewhere. Let's look through the code. Okay, so I see the error. So everything should work fine now. Okay, let's check. All right, so now we can see that the visitor is from DE, Germany, and from European Union. So everything is working fine. Let's also check the cookies. So visitor country code, and we can see that the value is set to true, that the visitor came from European Union. So everything is working fine, and now we can continue with the implementation. So what we've done is we implemented GeoIP Lookup service, and we were able to successfully retrieve the location information and set two cookies. One cookie now contains the country code. The second cookie contains the flag true or false, depending on whether the visitor came from European Union or his location is outside of European Union. So what we are going to do next? In the previous training, we implemented cookie consent form on the site, and now it looks as you see on the top. So there is a message that the website uses cookies, and the visitor should either allow cookies or decline. And basically, this works for usually those who come to the site from European Union. You don't need to show it, for example, if the site is in the US and the visitors also come to the site from the US, you may not need to show it. This is why it doesn't make sense to show it to everyone, right? You want to build a condition to show this cookie consent form only to those who came from European Union. So now we can do this because now we know whether the visitor is from European Union or not. And let's amend the implementation in Adobe Launch to build the logic the way that cookie consent form should be shown only in case the visitor came from European Union. To watch the full version of this video and to get access to Adobe Launch Implementation Mastery course, follow the link underneath of this video. Hi, my name is Andrei Osachuk. I am a multi-solution architect and consultant on Adobe Analytics, Target, Audience Manager, DTM, and Launch. I began to implement Adobe solutions 9 years ago. Since that time, I have deployed about 100 of B2C and B2B projects. 10 years ago, tag managers were considered an innovation. At that time, all tag implementations were managed as standalone JavaScript libraries and lots of custom code all over the site pages. Today, it's hardly possible to imagine how to manage dozens of tags and conversion pixels without a tag management solution. In the past, I actively used Adobe Dynamic Tag Management for tags implementation for small, medium, and large projects. As time goes by, Adobe now offers a new cutting-edge platform for implementing any type of tag on web and mobile. And this is Adobe Launch, also known as Launch by Adobe. Today I'm happy to announce my new Adobe Launch Implementation Mastery course for analytics developers and those who want to learn how to implement tags with Adobe Launch. This course will be helpful for those who have never used Adobe Launch, as well as for those who have just started and want to enhance their skills and experience. The course consists of 28 videos and covers all capabilities of Adobe Launch that are essential for the solution implementation and its usage. I built the course with various scenarios commonly used in the implementation practice, so you will get required practical skills that will allow you to build your own implementation right after the course. The scenarios include banner performance measurement, form tracking, single-page application, and other. It will take you about 2 days to complete the full course and get to know all essential components of Adobe Launch. After its completion, you will be able to implement Adobe Launch and any tag or conversion pixel on the website. For those who do not have a test website for self-training, I will create a copy of the website this video course is built on with your own Adobe Launch library implemented, so you can do all exercises demonstrated in this course. To make sure that you are happy and satisfied with the course, I include one individual online training on Adobe Launch with me personally at no extra cost. You will be able to raise all your outstanding questions. Sign up for the Mastery course today to become a professional in Adobe Launch. Talk to you soon.